Clashes in Chinstate, a deepening divide between CDF and Cndf displaces thousands into Mizoram. By Gary T. Hauke, Zalingam Media, July 6, 2025. As of July 6, 2025, a fresh wave of violence has once again engulfed Myanmar's Chinstate, forcing over 1,000 civilians to flee across the porous Indo-Myanmar border into Mizoram. The escalating conflict between two Chin resistance factions, the Chin Land Defense Force, CDF, and the Chin National Defense Force, Cndf, has transformed the otherwise peaceful border villages of Raikadar and Kamui into battlegrounds. The fierce clashes that erupted on July 2 have since displaced more than 1,000 refugees, adding to the 35,000 already sheltering in Mizoram. Stray bullets have crossed into Indian territory, damaging civilian property in Zokothar. Tragically, one refugee is reported to have drowned while attempting to cross the Tayau River. In response, Indian security forces sealed the Zokothar border gate, halting the daily movement of Myanmar nationals who depend on Mizoram for essential services. According to reports by the Economic Times, Northeast Live TV, and Times of India, the Cndf has successfully seized all 8 camps formerly controlled by CDF Walngaram. This victory, however, came at the cost of lives and further fragmentation among Chin resistance groups. At least one CDF Walngaram fighter was killed, and 6 others were injured, 4 from the CDF faction and 2 from Cndf. The situation reflects the deepening internal rift within Chin armed resistance networks. Once allies in the broader struggle against Myanmar's military junta, these two groups now find themselves pitted against one another in a bitter power struggle rooted in diverging political ideologies and territorial claims. Seeds of Discord, a look into the background. The roots of this conflict stretch back to the aftermath of the February 1, 2021 military coup in Myanmar, which toppled the elected civilian government. In response, armed resistance groups mushroomed across the country, particularly in the ethnic states, including Chinstate. The Chin Land Defense Force, CDF, was established on April 4, 2021, under the larger umbrella of the Chinland Joint Defense Committee, CJDC. It positioned itself as the armed protector of Chinland and aligned with the Chinland Council, a political body advocating for a unified, autonomous Chinland. This vision included aspirations for an ethnically Chin-led governance structure with self-determination at its core. Shortly after, on April 13, 2021, the Chin National Defense Force, Cndf, was formed as the military wing of the Chin National Organization, CNO. Though it also resisted the military junta, Cndf's strategic vision began to diverge from that of the Chinland Council. It sought a more decentralized or federated political framework, one that did not endorse the formation of a unified Chinland as proposed by the Chinland Council. Initially, both groups cooperated on the battlefield, aligning with larger coalitions such as the Chin National Army, CNA, the armed wing of the Chin National Front, CNF. Between 2021 and 2023, CDF and Cndf fought side by side in multiple operations against the Myanmar military in Chinstate, Magway region, and Soging region. The Great Schism, from allies to adversaries. By late 2023, the political ambitions of both groups clashed. The Chinland Council's vision of an ethnically Chin autonomous region began to take formal shape, prompting resistance from Cndf and its political allies. In response, Cndf joined forces with like-minded organizations and helped establish the Chin Brotherhood Alliance in early 2024. The alliance includes groups such as the Zomi Federal Union, ZFU, the Maraland Territorial Council, MTC, and the Maraland Defense Force, MDF. These factions opposed the idea of a centralized Chinland, instead favoring a more diverse and federated governance structure that respected the autonomy of Chin subtribes. One of the earliest and most notable clashes between the two camps occurred on January 31, 2024. Several CDF factions, including those from Mara, Paletwa, Phantlang, Zophii, Latu, and Sentang, joined hands with the CNA to launch an offensive against MDF, a member of the Chin Brotherhood Alliance. The offensive was triggered after MDF fighters allegedly killed a CNA soldier and captured multiple CDF Mara members. This was a pivotal moment that marked the shift from political disagreement to open warfare between Chin resistance groups. The current flashpoint, July 2025 clashes near the Indo-Myanmar border. The latest episode of violence erupted in the border areas of Raikadar and Kamui, located in Phalam Township near Mizoram's Champhai district. According to local reports, Cndf established unauthorized checkpoints in Kothlir village around July 2, inspecting phones and extorting money from civilians. This act was seen as a direct provocation by CDF Wollongaram, which responded with an armed operation that escalated into a full-scale confrontation. Fighting spread rapidly to neighboring areas, including Satam, Liana, and Kamui. By July 5, Cndf had seized all 8 camps previously under CDF Wollongaram's control. Reports indicate that Cndf also deployed drones to target CDF positions in Satam and Tuachar, marking a new chapter in the technological sophistication of Myanmar's internal conflict. This territorial shift prompted CDF Wollongaram to declare a state of emergency on June 16, 2025. The group cited repeated encroachments by Cndf forces as the reason behind the declaration. The armed engagements led to the deaths and injuries mentioned earlier, with wounded fighters treated in Indian border towns like Zokothar.
Humanitarian fallout and cross-border tensions. The immediate humanitarian impact of the clashes has been severe. Over 1,000 refugees poured into Mizoram within days, primarily belonging to the Kukazo Chin communities, who share cultural and linguistic ties with the native Misos. This has somewhat softened the public reception of the displaced, though local resources are stretched thin. One refugee reportedly drowned while trying to cross the Chiao River into India. The Assam Rifles, responsible for guarding the border, have sealed the Zokothar crossing, complicating life for those who routinely seek medical and educational services in India. Stray bullets have damaged homes and vehicles in Zokothar, raising alarms about the potential spillover of violence. Reports from Times of India and Northeast Live TV show growing security concerns, with Indian intelligence worried about arms trafficking and insurgent movement across the 510-kilometer unfenced border. The Young Mizo Association, a powerful civil society body, has reportedly warned that unless the shooting across the border ceases, they will begin pushing refugees back into Myanmar. This reflects the delicate balance Mizoram maintains between humanitarian support and its own internal stability. Deepening factionalism, the bigger picture. The CDF-CNDF conflict is symptomatic of a broader issue in Myanmar's resistance movement, the absence of a unified political vision. While both groups originally formed to fight the same enemy, the military junta, they have since fractured along ideological, ethnic, and strategic lines. The Chinland Council-aligned CDF factions include various battalions from Tonzang, Huangaram, Hakka, Thantlang, Lautu, Zofei, and others. On the other hand, CNDF's coalition under the Chin Brotherhood includes groups from Mindat, Matupi, Kanpetlit, and the Maraland region. In Matupi Township, for instance, clashes from late June to early July 2024 saw Chinland Council troops lose control to Chin Brotherhood forces backed by the Arakan army. Similarly, a confrontation in Lia Lai Township on July 13, 2024, featured Maraland CDF fighters battling CNA forces. Efforts to reconcile these groups have so far failed. A proposed merger between CNDF and other factions, discussed during a February 2025 meeting in Arizal, ended in deadlock. Mutual distrust, competing ambitions, and localized control over territories have made cooperation elusive. Strategic implications: who gains? While CNDF and CDF battle each other, the primary adversary, the Myanmar military junta, stands to benefit. A divided resistance is a weakened resistance. As of May 2025, the junta maintained control over key urban centers in Chinstate, including Hakka, Thantlang, and Tedim. However, resistance groups still control 6 of the state's 9 townships. Continued infighting threatens to erode even that tenuous hold.
Moreover, the use of drones and increasingly sophisticated tactics by CNDF points to external support or access to modern warfare capabilities. Intelligence sources in Mizoram suggest that CNDF may be receiving indirect backing through arms trafficking routes that pass through Longklai district. The capture of high-grade weapons from rebel fighters lends credibility to this claim. India's security establishment is also concerned about the potential for the Chin conflict to spill into Kuki-controlled territories within its borders. Ethnic solidarity has prompted support for Chin refugees, but the increasing militarization along the border may eventually prompt harsher measures. The path forward, dialogue or decay? According to a survey conducted by the Chin Civic Movement in August 2024, most respondents blamed the infighting on a lack of communication, recognition, and understanding between the factions. While there is a broad consensus that defeating the junta remains the ultimate goal, ideological differences over the future of Chinland continue to obstruct unity. Efforts to mediate peace talks have been sporadic and largely ineffective. Organizations like Burma News International have noted repeated delays in conflict resolution meetings. The most recent flare-ups indicate that both CNDF and CDF factions remain committed to their current trajectories, with no signs of de-escalation. Conclusion: the conflict between the Chinland Defense Force and the Chin National Defense Force reflects a tragic unraveling of resistance unity in Myanmar's Chinstate. While both groups were forged in the fire of revolution, the divergent political visions they now hold have made them bitter enemies. The recent clashes near Rikordar and Kamawi have displaced thousands, strained resources in neighboring Mizoram, and opened up new vulnerabilities along India's northeast frontier. Unless urgent steps are taken to mediate the conflict and redirect focus toward the common enemy, the Myanmar junta, the region risks further destabilization. The cost is already being borne by innocent civilians who find themselves caught in a war not of their choosing, seeking refuge across borders that no longer feel secure. Disclaimer: this report is produced by Zalangam Media for documentary and educational purposes. It presents a factual reconstruction based on publicly available sources and eyewitness accounts. The views expressed do not reflect any political bias, but aim to inform and document the ongoing crisis in Myanmar's Chin state.
bật lên nhìn nó còn tràn lụt nước dễ lên này mấy đứt sông thung xuống hôn mắm té